Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MCJ Report number 159. Welcome to the show, MCJ Report. We are independent media and I am your host, Morgan C. Jonas, and also independent Senate candidate in this upcoming federal election. I'd like to welcome everybody to the broadcast, all my regular viewers, and maybe if you're here for the first time, also welcome on board. Please go ahead and share the broadcast. Let's get the word out there. You know what we do on MCJ Report. We ask the tough questions and we ask the questions otherwise mostly or not asked at all by the mainstream media. All right, well, it's Monday, ladies and gentlemen. There is no shortage of news and scandals in this terrible time that we're living in. So tell you what, let's get stuck straight into it, covering some latest news. All right, so first up on the agenda, here we go. The dictator of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, despite 3 jabs, he's got COVID-19 and supposedly he's not feeling too well. And this is supposedly newsworthy. Anyway, moving along here. Alrighty, what do we have here? Petrol prices set to be slashed. Now, I'm actually shocked. I did not predict this. In fact, I put on record, I predicted the opposite. I did not expect the government to alleviate petrol prices for consumers, but it looks here that there will be some reduction to fuel excise or tax of about 20 cents per litre. Now, we know that excise is a lot more than that, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But I have to think this is probably a bit of a tactic by the Liberal Party leading up to the federal election. What do you think? Look at us, we care. Here's a discount off your petrol. What do you think? Put your thoughts in the comments. All right, moving along here. International Rugby League World in mourning as Tiziano Francisci, 44 years old, dies from a suspected heart attack. Very, very sad. An athlete. We've seen some similar occurrences from other athletes in recent times and people in their 40s and 50s suffering from these heart attacks. Moving along here, country music singer and police officer Jeff Carson dies at age 58. It says here that he died of a heart attack in a hospital in Franklin, and it doesn't really go on to say much more than that. Of course, our condolences to his family. This seems to be a bit of a growing trend. Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins dead at 50. This was reported by news.com.au. It did make mention of some drug use, but again, the definitive cause of death has not been published or officially determined. What else do we have here? Nadal suffers breathing problems as winning streak comes to an end. Okay, so Rafael Nadal, famous tennis player, maybe second to the great Djokovic, maybe second or third. Don't quote me, I'm not an expert on tennis rankings, but we hope that he feels better soon as well. Alrighty, what do we have here? Moving along. All right, expert calls to research possible link between COVID vaccine and tinnitus. All right, so it says here, moments after his second shot, vaccine expert Gregory Poland says he felt a pain so severe it almost caused him to veer off the road, although no official link has been published as of yet. So this is coming from an expert in his field, published by 7news.com.au, so please don't censor me social media. I'm just commenting on what the mainstream media is saying. Alrighty, so a little bit of different news here. Over to the United States. NCAA swimmer wants rule change after missing out on finals to Leah Thomas. A Virginia Tech swimmer blasted the NCAA over its rule allowing transgender women to compete against biological women after she came up short in a championship qualifying race that was dominated by University of Pennsylvania transgender swimmer Leah Thomas. This seems to be an emerging trend. We're seeing this in many different sports around the world. What do you think of this trend, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think it's fair or do you think it's not? I'm asking you the question. Put your thoughts in the comments and make your voice heard. Alrighty, now let's see. That takes us to the end of the new segment. So let's get this show underway, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, now kicking things off, Morgan C. Jonas, Independent for Senate. That's right, I'm talking about myself. A little plug, morgancjonas.com. If you'd like to stay up to date with my Independent Senate campaign, head on over to morgancjonas.com. Put your details in, and I will make sure that you stay informed in regards to our policy positions. Several have been published up until this point, and more will be published tomorrow. Also, I'm about to announce our tour dates. We will be going throughout all corners of Victoria, talking about the campaign. So this is quite a unique campaign. Basically, it's a political campaign version of MCJ Report, right? MCJ Report, independent media. This campaign, independent, well and truly, and that's the way we absolutely love it. So morgancjonas.com, and I must say, for compliance purposes, that this mention is authorised by Morgan C. Jonas from Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Got to cross your T's and dot your I's. Alrighty, now, let's get this started, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Who here saw this? What an absolute disgrace. Does the government not have anything better to do? Or are they simply looking to raise their revenue by, sabotaging private business? Would the government truly be capable of doing something like that? Well, I think you know the answer to that. Of course they would. This is just another day in the life of the Australian government, not serving the people, actually posing a detriment to the people. Look at this. Aussie pubs could face fines of up to $200,000 for pouring incorrect volumes. That's right. So we're talking about pouring drinks. Should the measurements not be as expected, pubs could be fined, private businesses potentially decimated. Which civilian asked for some type of check like this? Do we really need these types of checks and balances? I mean, this is why we have Google reviews. If there is a pub out there purposefully pouring incorrect amounts, and I don't know if there is, I haven't come across anyone like that, it is simply a matter of customer feedback and complaints that would lead to that particular business acquiring a low star rating on Google that would directly affect a private business, and that's just simply a matter of competing in the free market. That's what the free market is supposed to be. Whoever offers the best service gets the business, and whoever cheats on offering a service or offers a substandard service will eventually be driven out of the market by superior competition. The free market takes care of this stuff. We don't need the government intervening. What do you think? Do you think this is a government exercise to ensure the highest standard of drinking experiences for consumers? Or is this just a way for the government to rort private businesses who have already suffered so much under these disastrous lockdowns? Now, I've got a little video for you. I'm going to play it for you right now.
Bars and pubs will come under scrutiny this week as inspectors from the National Measurement Institute carry out a blitz across the country. They've been nicknamed the Pint Police, but they'll be measuring far more than how much beer is being poured into a glass.
Across the country, bars are on notice. A week-long blitz is underway, making sure patrons aren't being shortchanged with short pours.
What it does say is that pubs, bars, anyone who sells beverages by the measure must do so at the correct amount.
The Pint Police will be on patrol. More than 350 licensed venues will be paid a visit.
So we may come in different formats. So we may come as a badged inspector. So we may turn up in uniform and present ourselves, or we may just be doing a secret shopper to make sure that that businesses are doing the right thing.
If the customers expect to get value for money, they get what they pay for.
It's been a tough 2 years for Melbourne pub The Tippler & Co.
With all the different aspects of each lockdown, it's been really hard.
They want customers to know the doors are open and the liquid gold still flowing.
Looking forward, I think that it's great to sort of get out, support your local and come and visit the Tippler and other venues that are around you.
From a short pour to watering down drinks, there's a multitude of ways you could be getting ripped off, but venue owners say the majority are following the rules.
And every venue that I sort of been to or know about, I think everyone's doing the right thing.
So it's all about making sure that industry bodies and staff members are adequately trained and that publicans are aware of their obligations to pour correct measurement.
The last time one of these audits was carried out, almost 30% of traders were...
What an absolute disgrace, ladies and gentlemen. Get a load of this guy, Gavin Watts, from the Measurement Institute. Is this a real job? Why is the Australian government creating these jobs for people who I dare say would never last a day in the private sector, so they can, take home a nice wage at the expense of destroying private businesses? What an absolute disgrace, ladies and gentlemen. Now, when I talk about the dire need to reduce the size and scope of government, I'm talking about departments like this. This guy, Gavin Watts, he should not be employed in this type of capacity. What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? Now, here are some of my thoughts on this exercise, and I consider it to be predatory. I consider it to have nothing to do with consumer experience and everything to do with the government just beefing up their bank accounts. Look at this. All right, so here are my final thoughts. It's easy to accidentally pour an incorrect amount of beer due to froth, especially for beginners. That's right. Have you ever poured a glass of beer before? It's actually not that easy unless you know what you're doing and you have some experience. It's easy, very easy to pour less than a full glass. So I'd hate to see a pub getting a fine just because somebody made a mistake or somebody was new, but it seems the scope for that potential is very, very real. Point number 2, this is just another example of wasteful bureaucracy that A, provides jobs for the talentless, that's right, I said it, talentless, people like Gavin Watts, and that B, is designed to raise government revenue by preying on private business. Haven't private businesses suffered enough? What an absolute disgrace, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe that we pay the wages for people that work in these types of departments at the expense of simply destroying our businesses. Let the free market sort it out. The government needs to get the hell out of trying to regulate these types of businesses. For what? Pouring beer? What an absolute disgrace. All right, moving along here. China to sign, quote, security deal with Soloman Islands. All righty. Okay, so this should really come as no surprise to anyone, and this actually comes despite a former security agreement between the Soloman Islands and Australia. Now, I've put the word security in inverted commas, okay, because what is referred to as security, some people speculate, could be a euphemism for future military development and the deployment of military assets to the Soloman Islands, which of course is only a couple of thousand kilometers from the shores of Australia. Now, why is this concerning, ladies and gentlemen? Why is it concerning? Well, it's no secret that China has dramatically increased its sphere of influence, particularly in the Asian region and the Indo-Pacific. China has a vested interest in almost all the small neighbouring countries around Australia, directly in our geographical region. And should we see a build-up of military assets throughout this region, this could very well pose a very significant and substantial security threat to Australia. It's kind of like having hostile entities surround your house with weapons. You're not going to feel very comfortable in a situation like that. So let's take a little bit of a look into what's going on here. So Australia alarm over China's security deal with Soloman Islands. All right, so that was from Al Jazeera. It says, leaked document indicates... sorry, let me just enlarge that a little bit. Leaked document indicates pact would allow Beijing to deploy police and troops to the Pacific nation at the government's request, but also to protect its own nationals and interests. All right, so is it about security for China, or is it about expansionism and expansion of their military positions throughout the world, but more specifically in our backyard? All right, so let's take a little bit of a look here at this situation a little bit more closely. Alrighty, so really concerning. Yeah, of course it's concerning, and our government should have had the foresight to see this coming a very long time ago, and should have made the correct adjustments to our defense policy. But it looks like China is expanding too fast for that, so we're going to have to probably make some big changes in the very near future. All right, so China finalizing security deal with Soloman Islands to base warships in the Pacific. Draft agreement circulating on social media suggests China could establish a military base less than 2,000 kilometers from Australia. It goes on to say, according to a copy of the draft security agreement circulating on social media, it would allow China to base Navy warships in the Pacific. That is pretty concerning. So let's take a look at the map here so we can see what we're talking about. So there's Queensland right there. There's the Soloman Islands, as you can see, in very close proximity to Australia. Now, it's also important to take note that China, mostly via the Belt and Road Initiative and other predatory commercial dealings, has managed to attain an economic foothold in almost all the small nations surrounding Australia. Now, one of the regularly expressed concerns about the Belt and Road Initiative is that it could pose as a segue into Chinese communist military expansion. That's right. We saw over in Africa, the African nation of Djibouti initially signed the Belt and Road Initiative and ended up having to relinquish areas of land for the establishment of an offshore Chinese military base. So Belt and Road Initiative all around this region, so from Vanuatu, Fiji, Tonga. Of course, there's interest in Papua New Guinea. We look a little bit across here to Indonesia. China and Indonesia have been running joint naval patrols, especially since the inception of COVID, whereby Indonesia has embarked on a tremendous amount of what they call vaccine diplomacy with the Chinese communist regime. There's also been talks by China of setting up a super city, what they refer to it as, right here in Daru, just very close to the northerly tip of Queensland, and we're very, very concerned about this. So the major question we need to be asking ourselves is the Australian Defence Force capable of fending off a potential invasion or attack in the future? Now, some people may argue that, well, China doesn't need to invade Australia. They've already done so well by means of what you could refer to as silent invasion, with huge amounts of acquisitions in our country, including but not limited to real estate, land, mining rights, strategic assets such as electricity grids, water, ports, that type of stuff. But the increasing presence of Chinese military is certainly something that we should be concerned about. Now, some people are at the conclusion that Australian defence policy since World War II has been largely based on the notion that regardless of what happens in the world, or more specifically throughout Asia, the United States military will have our back. But what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think it's wise that we in Australia rely on the United States moving forward for our security? The USA has, of course, been a tremendous security partner since World War II, and Australia has been able to trade throughout the many maritime trading routes that lead across into Asia and around the world, and really there has not been a country that has challenged us, but that's not due to our ADF, that's due to our alliance with the United States. So the question we need to be asking ourselves is, if the United States was to weaken, and if the United States was to lose their influence in Asia, and if China was to increase their influence, and we know that they are, of course, with the military buildup in the South China Sea, and as I mentioned, the Belt and Road Initiative, and now the very real potential of a naval base just a couple of thousand kilometers from Australia, will Australia be able to adequately defend itself based on the trajectory of our defence policy, or are we going to need some drastic changes? Are we going to need a huge increase in defense? Are we going to be required to acquire other military hardware that could act as a deterrent? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? I'm just asking the question. So we've got a few things to worry about here in Australia, I think it's safe to say. Of course, our freedoms have been very much under attack by our own government, but I dare say a lack of forward planning and an over-reliance on our partner, the United States, has left us very, very vulnerable to a powerful expansionist regime, such as the Chinese Communist regime. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Put your thoughts in the comments. I think it's very concerning, and I think this really shows a drastic need for Australia to stand on its own 2 feet, because maybe, just maybe, the United States will not always be there to come to our aid, especially with China's rise in this arena. So what do you think? Put your thoughts in the comments. Alrighty, now moving along here. Alright, so this is really annoying. If you get frustrated by hearing about the extent to which we, the Australian people, are being ripped off by politicians, present and past, you should probably turn this off right now, because what I'm going to show you in this segment is probably going to compel you to break something. So make sure there's no sharp objects around you. This is just absolutely disgraceful. It's not spoken about nearly enough, but we're going to speak about it now. All right, so Australians have dished out over $1 billion to former members of Parliament. That's right. So if you thought that parliamentary expenses were ridiculous, and of course a lot of them are, what's even more ridiculous is the fact that we are paying these politicians long after they step down from office. So let's have a bit of a delve into this, and I'll start painting a bit of a picture, and I'll let you make up your own mind about it. So I'm going to put this in context, and then we're going to go through some numbers and figures. Look at this. So this was published 3 years ago. Taxpayers face bill of up to $1 billion to fund MPs' retirements. Taxpayers will pay up to $1 billion to fund the retirement of politicians under an axed parliamentary pension scheme, and the cost of the scheme will blow out by another 10% by 2020 to $50 million per year. And I dare say that estimate was probably quite accurate. So just to put this in context, the rules for parliamentary pensions changed after 2004. That's right. So under the John Howard government. So prior to 2004, MPs leaving Parliament were very much likely to receive a lifetime of pensions, a percentage of their wage, a very, very decent percentage. So that rule changed after 2004 and converted into somewhat of a package between 3 to 6 months worth of wages for members of Parliament leaving politics to get back on their feet. So let's take a look more specifically at the rules before 2004, because this is what is really imposing the greatest burden on taxpayers, and it's an absolute disgrace. Alrighty, so here's another article, this one from 2 years ago. Scrapping politicians' six-figure pensions would save $350 million, costings shown. That was raised by a Greens member. Okay, so it's nice to see when the Greens speak about good issues that actually help people. Goes on to say here, taxpayers would save $350 million if the government abolished perks giving retired politicians six-figure pensions for life. Retired politicians elected prior to 2004 enjoy access to a hugely lucrative pension scheme which pays well above $100,000 annually for life or a large lump sum. Well, a lot of the time the figure is much higher than $100,000 per year, or a large lump sum. Well, often it's a large lump sum plus an ongoing annual so-called pension, which I think we should just rename to scam. I think the word scam would be much more fitting. Tony Abbott gets $90,000 raise on backbencher's salary now that he's a retired PM. That's right. So the ongoing pension for retired prime ministers, of course, is higher than a regular MP because prime ministers are paid more. So this is an interesting example here of Tony Abbott that was prime minister, went to the backbench, retired from politics, and actually ended up receiving a raise in retirement courtesy of you and me, the taxpayers. So there was actually an amendment to this article It said, due to a miscalculation, a previous version said Tony Abbott would be $100,000 better off. All right, so they had to amend it to 90. All right, so let's keep moving along here. We're going to go through some nuts and bolts. So I'm just sort of gearing you up for what's in store here. Now, this is the best analysis that I found from looking on the internet. So this was published by William Summers. He is a journalist based in Melbourne. He does work for the Australian Associated Press. And this was in 2019 that he conducted this analysis on the degree to which taxpayers are still forking out for these members of parliament post their political careers. All right, so keep in mind that as the years roll along, the increases to parliamentary wages increase, which means the increases to their pensions also increase. And this is, of course, going off the rules prior to 2004. So I'm going to read some highlights from this article here and try not to yell and swear too much when I show you what's going on. All right. Okay, so it says, note this article was first published in the 2018-19 calendar. The base salary for MPs and senators has since increased 2% for 1920, so the relevant pension figures below have also increased by the same percentage. All right, so that sort of just recaps what I just said. All right, so who is eligible? MPs and senators elected before the 2004 federal election and in continuous service since are all enrolled in the generous defined benefit scheme called the Parliamentary Contributory Superannuation Scheme, constituted through the Parliamentary Contributory Superannuation Act of 1948, originally known as the Parliamentary Retiring Allowances Act of 1948. Eligible politicians must contribute 11.5% of their salaries to the scheme. In return, they get big payouts as described below, courtesy of you, the Australian taxpayer. All right, so let's have a look at how the numbers are calculated. So number one, start with the numbers of years in Parliament. All right, so full years in Parliament, and of course this is prior to 2004, but we are still paying out big time for this. Full years in Parliament, 8, percentage of base salary to be paid in pension, 50%. 9 years goes to 52.5%. So I'll just scroll down here. So 18 years plus is 75%. All right, now it's also important to point out that what they refer to as the pensionary total amount of income to be received is 80%. All right, so it goes on to say here, to unnecessarily complicate things further, the Remuneration Tribunal says that only 80% counts towards the pension calculation. All right, so in other words, if an MP's income was $200,000, the pension would be based minus 20%. So that would be based on $160,000, and the percentage of base salary to be paid as pension is as listed right here in this chart. I'll put this link in my Telegram page, MCJ Report, so you can get a bit more of a better understanding of it. Alrighty, so let's go on here. It says here, add on extra cash for ministerial roles. So of course the Prime Minister earning more, the Deputy Prime Minister. Additional role salary loading, we've got 160% here for the Prime Minister, and down the chain it goes. Don't forget to update figures for each year. Yep, so of course when wages go up for politicians, so do the pensions for the politicians benefiting from this rort, of course, prior to 2004. It says here, when MPs' pay went up 2% last year, the pensions of retired politicians also went up by 2%. When MPs' pay went up by over 30% in 2012, the pension of retired politicians also went up by over 30%. All right, how much will this year's retirees get? And keep in mind, this is from 2019, so the figures today will be even more. All right, here are a couple of examples. Julie Bishop, raise your hands if you remember Julie Bishop. Total pension, annual, $212,991. Christopher Pine will get $220,425. All right, so keep in mind this was published in 2019. So we're still paying this, okay? And I dare say in 2022, those figures have probably increased. There's also a provision here for lump sum payments. That's right. So former members of Parliament capitalising off this scheme are able to receive lump payments up front. Look at this. MPs can also choose to take up to half of their pension as a lump sum, which is calculated using yet another formula. Retiring MPs can take up to half their pension up front at 10 times the current rate until they are over 65, which point the rate of the lump sum decreases each year. Okay, so it goes on to say that means Julie Bishop could take a one-off windfall of more than $1 million now and still get paid at least $106,000 each year for the rest of her life. All right, not too bad. So what's the total cost to the taxpayers? 2018 report for the Department of Finance estimated the total current liability of the pre-2004 Parliamentary Pensions scheme to be $912.9 million. All right. The annual outlay for retired pension holders is currently at $43.7 million, rising to $59.3 million in 2035. All right. So that's the annual burden for taxpayers, forking out tens of millions of dollars on an annual basis for these ex-politicians. Okay, many of them, of course, during their tenure did not improve Australia. Many left Australia a worse place as opposed to when they first got involved in politics. So the question is, why must this scam remain in place? Why can't we simply abolish it? Okay, it was done away, of course, under Howard, but he made sure that he remained in there to get the benefits himself. Why can't the same rules that apply to the private sector apply to the public sector? So many of these politicians did nothing but hurt our country, and we continue to fork out tens of millions of dollars on an annual basis. All right, I'm going to keep reading along here. What exactly is Malcolm Turnbull entitled to in life after Parliament? So here's a few other bits and pieces which fall outside of these ridiculous pensions. Look at this. The Members of Parliament Life Gold Pass Act of 2002 allows former Prime Ministers who have left Parliament to receive a number of facilities at the discretion of the Prime Minister of the day. These include car costs and office entitlements such as office establishment and lease costs, smartphones, stationery, and publications. And also we see another scheme for travel, but strictly for non-commercial purposes. All right, so travel for leisure. That's right. So travel for leisure, funding their so-called office expenses, and on top of that, massive pensions. All right, let's take a bit more of a look here. The true cost of our former prime ministers. Australia's former prime ministers alone have claimed nearly $500,000 in just 6 months to fly around the country and run their offices, analysis shows. So that was from 2018. It is still going on today. Let's take a bit more of a closer look at a couple of former prime ministers' expenses. Let's start with John Howard. Raise your hand if you know who John Howard is. All right, so again, this is not in relation to their pensions, just expenses for running their office and things like that. All right, so this was from the 1st of July to the 30th of September 2021. The not so honourable John Howard. Let's see, what has he racked up here? So that's a 3-month period. Car costs, including a private plated vehicle, $4,506.95. Office facilities, $80,627.92. What is he doing in this office? Why does he need this? What is he possibly getting up to of benefit to the Australian people that justifies this type of office expense, in addition to his massive 6-figure pension that you and I are paying for? What a disgrace. He's got administrative costs here, telecommunication costs, total expenditure, $86,746 just on his expenses. And you go down here, there's office facilities. He's got a bunch of newspaper subscriptions. How frustrating is it when you try to open a newspaper article just to be met with a paywall? Well, John Howard doesn't have that problem because we pay for those services for him. All right, here's another person here, the not so honourable Julia Gillard. I mean, it makes you laugh, doesn't it, this title of honourable? What a joke. What an absolute joke. So what did she rack up in 3 months? $28,169.19. What is she doing for Australia? Has she been outspoken about the tyranny that we've experienced over the past 2 years? The Australians that have lost their jobs, the families that have been torn apart. This is absolutely disgraceful, ladies and gentlemen. And just when you thought it couldn't get anything worse, check this out. Retirement travel, that's right. So retirement travel for former members of parliament comes in two forms. You've got the Life Gold Pass, that's right. There's former politicians walking around with a pass called the Life Gold Pass that entitles them to a lifetime of free travel. Free travel. Business class, first class, whatever they think is necessary. And there's also something called Severance Travel, which is a little bit more restricted. So what's the difference? So on one hand, you've got Severance Travel, and it allows former parliamentarians who do not qualify for a Life Gold Pass to travel domestically at government expense. Well, it's not government expense, it's expense of we the people. For a limited time, the class of travel is as determined for current parliamentarians. Severance travel is for non-commercial purposes only. Non-commercial purposes, it must strictly be used for having fun, right? Because that's the job of the Australian taxpayer, to make sure that politicians post-retirement can have fun whenever they want. So look at this. Qualifying period, 1 service in Parliament. You get 6 months travel, 12 return trips anywhere in Australia. Service in 2 parliaments, travel for 1 year, 25 return trips. And goes down the list from here. All right. But what you really want is the Life Gold Pass. That's where it's at. Forget this. Forget the severance travel, all right? You got ex-members of parliament out there waving this gold pass around. Look at this. Oh my goodness. All right. So as the name suggests, a Life Gold Pass means a lifetime of free travel. So what do you have to do to be entitled to one of these? Serve as a Prime Minister for 1 year. Serve as a Minister for 6 years. President of the Senate for 6, Speaker of the House of Representatives for 6 years, Leader of the Opposition for 6 years, and also Parliamentary Secretary, Senators and Members, 20 years, or the life of 7 parliaments. So if you do that, you too could be, you could be the proud owner of a Life Gold Pass. All right, so what exactly does it entitle you to? The Life Gold Pass entitles eligible former parliamentarians to travel within Australia at government expense for their lifetime. There is no entitlement to overseas travel. All right, so stick to Australia. The entitlement under the Member of Parliament Life Gold Pass Act, the year 2002. I mean, this just makes you so mad. This is why we need a form of direct democracy, so we, the public, can get involved in these bills. If this bill, this Life Gold Pass, went to a public vote, we would never vote for this. There's no good reason why these ex-members of parliament, many were involved in the destruction of our country. There's no reason why they should be travelling around sipping champagne at our expense. All right, so what does it entitle you to? I'll tell you what. It's better than a platinum American Express card. Okay, entitlement of a cap of 25 domestic return trips annually for former eligible parliamentarians. For what possible reason would they need to be travelling 25 times in a year? An entitlement to a cap of 40 domestic return trips for former eligible prime ministers. Travel to be not for commercial purposes, as in only for fun. Travel is scheduled air, rail, bus, tram, ferry, or vehicular service, or a combination of these scheduled services. Travel is at the class determined for serving parliamentarians, currently first or business class, all right? So forget economy, they're too good for that. They don't want to be sitting in economy with the regular folk. No, they wouldn't want to do that. Let's see. Frequent flyer points to be used to offset future travel in line with government policy. Oh, great. So maybe the taxpayers will get a break should some of these ex-politicians utilise their frequent flyer points. All right, serving parliamentarians who become eligible for a Life Gold Pass shall have it suspended until they retire from Parliament. All right, so that's when the real fun begins. So someone like Greg Hunt, right, he was in there before 2004. He's going to leave Parliament. He'll be on a ridiculous lifetime pension. He'll be, on top of that pension, he'll be spending huge amounts of taxpayer money for his so-called office expenses, whatever the hell that is. And he'll be traveling around Australia on either business or first class at our expense. This is criminal. They are the criminals. This is disgusting. This is not democracy. They made the rules for themselves, knowing that we, the civilians, could do nothing about it. All right, also under the Gold Pass are a bunch of entitlements for spouses, widows, and the list goes on and on and on. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the true figure that you and I are forking out year in, year out for these former politicians and former prime ministers? It's actually very difficult to work out. I'd like to see a true comprehensive breakdown. It would really take a great degree of research and compiling numbers. But basically, from what I can see, the major expenses we're looking at are, of course, these so-called pensions for politicians who have either left office and were in office prior to 2004. The ongoing expenses for prime ministers, and of course, we see these disgusting so-called travel allowances for former members as well. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you what I think. I think that members of parliament leaving office should be treated like people in the private sector. Just when you're done, you're done. That's it. No ongoing expenses, no special treatment. Go out, get a job like everybody else. Who here agrees with that? I will put on record that I absolutely stand for getting rid of this absolute garbage. All right, now, moving along here, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Now for some good news. All right, we like to end on some good news. Now, let me start with a disclaimer, and that is that this whole situation of lockdowns, I don't believe it's over. All right, as you know, Australia signed a global pact via the World Health Organization to sign up to a harmonized set of pandemic response protocols as outlined by the World Health Organization, and that's set to be ratified in 2024. Okay, so now just because some countries around the world are getting rid of all their COVID restrictions, including vaccine conditional entry, doesn't mean these restrictions will not come back in the future. We're not out of the woods. My position is, I'd say we need to leave the World Health Organization and definitely get out of these pacts that we've signed that seek to undermine our policy-making process here in Australia. All right, I just wanted to say that, but if you are looking at getting away and if you'd prefer to travel without showing your papers, well, I can make some recommendations for you, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Alrighty, so what do we have here, ladies and gentlemen? Let me get this up and running. Okay, so these 20 countries are now back to normal entry requirements. All right. This is coming from Travel Off Path. All right, although many nations still have COVID-related restrictions, 20 nations have completely scrapped all COVID-19 entry requirements within the last few months and have returned entry rules back to normal. As a result, travelers can enjoy the below countries without testing. All right, it's pretty good. Quarantine, proof of vaccination, and countries banned due to case numbers or variants. All right, so the rules are gone. The COVID rules are gone. It's essentially pre-pandemic normality for entering these 20 countries. All right, now there's other countries around the world that are not requiring proof of injection, but there's also many that might require testing and quarantine. All right, so as reported by Travel Off Path, none of that. So no test, no quarantine, no jab, no paperwork, no hokey pokey stuff. Just get on the plane and go. Now, I can't guarantee that getting back into Australia will be so easy, okay? So you want to go and check that with the Australian government. It's probably easier to leave Australia than to get back in. All right, Mexico. Put your hand up if you like Mexico. Who here would like to go to Mexico? I'd love to go. What a beautiful country, great culture, rich history, great food, nice people. All right, doing a bit of promo for Mexico here. So Mexico really got on this a long time ago and said, no, we don't care about tests. We don't care about jabs. Come to Mexico, spend your money because our tourism industry needs it. And to Mexico, I say, yeah, awesome. I agree. All right. El Salvador, beautiful country, of course. Central America. Norway, okay, another beautiful country right there. Norway scrapped it all. Slovenia, okay, beautiful architecture, another great place to check out over in Eastern Europe. Iceland, Bahrain, in the Middle East. Jordan, of course, a lot of great historical sites in Jordan. This is the MCJ Travel Show now, ladies and gentlemen. Ireland, okay, so a lot of us probably have family and friends in Ireland. Hungary, again, lots of nice architecture. Head to Budapest. Hungary has done a pretty good job over the years, sort of rejecting some of these emerging global woke agendas. So Hungary might be a good place to check out. Romania, Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia has actually, in recent years, taken steps to open up their tourism industry. That's right, looking to diversify their economy. I think Saudi Arabia would be a very fascinating place to visit. Of course, a lot of historic sites there. Montenegro, okay, look at that, just absolutely beautiful. Curacao in the Caribbean. I mean, who could do with this right now? I mean, unfortunately, a lot of us have been decimated financially during COVID, but these are potentially things to look forward to. England in the UK, that's right, a fairly recent development, so nice to see some common sense prevailing, at least for now. Maldives looks pretty good to me. I mean, I wouldn't mind to get away like that. I'll admit that. Aruba in the Caribbean. Aruba, famous for some of their casinos and beaches and things like that. Mongolia. Sorry, I've missed my place. Moldova over in Europe. Yemen. And so those appear to be the 20 countries there that don't require any sort of COVID-related measures for you to go in. There's also other countries that you can enter without a jab, but they might require testing and quarantine. So I'll tell you what, go to mcjreport.com, put your email address, sign up, and I'll send you the list of all these countries. There was also a recent article published about destinations that one can travel to without the jab. But this was from UK. So different countries have different rules that stipulate which unjabbed people from certain countries can enter. So you just have to go and, if you're planning on travel, go and check the respective government website to make sure that you're familiar with all the conditions of entry and things like that. So again, mcjreport.com, go and put your email address in the subscribe area, and I'll send all these out to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps us up for this evening. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and we're getting to it, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, if you'd like to follow my movements in terms of my campaign, it's morgancjonas.com. Go ahead and sign up. We're running this independent campaign the same way MCJ Report, independent. We're not controlled by anyone. We don't have anyone telling us what to do, what to say. There's no big sort of manager in the background tapping me on the shoulder saying, do this, do that. This is a true grassroots campaign. So get on board, morgancjonas.com. Support this campaign. If you want a staunch freedom guy in office, then I'm your guy. This is what I've been doing for a long time now. And again, this statement, this plug, authorized by Morgan C. Jonas, Melbourne, Australia. Guys, lots of love. Thank you for watching. Share the broadcast. I'll speak to you soon.
This video production was authorized by Morgan Charles Jonas, Melbourne.